Mesic resources, which are wet areas on the landscape, and include things like riparian areas and wet meadows like what we're standing in, and springs and seeps are really critical resources in sagebrush systems. They're estimated to take up about 2% of the landscape, but can offer up to 20% of livestock forage in a year and can support up to 80% of native plants and animals in the sagebrush steppe. And they're especially important for greater sage-grouse. So when the hens are done nesting in the uplands, once the chicks are big enough, they'll move them down to wet meadow areas like this one. And they're looking for food. They're looking for specific forbs to eat, and they're looking for green succulent vegetation. So when everything's kind of dried out on the hills, they'll move into areas like this, and they're really critical for greater sage-grouse survival. So we've got a couple of different species that depend on a meadow like this, right? It's providing important resources for sage-grouse, and it's providing valuable forage for livestock. And so that suggests that the way that livestock graze meadows like this and the response that we see from the plants that the sage-grouse eat could have big implications for resource availability for grouse. We started working on this project at Rock Creek, and what we're interested in doing is finding out whether there are particular grazing management strategies that could benefit sage-grouse and also benefit livestock producers. So we've got some experimental grazing trials going here. We're doing some short duration grazing in these meadows. So some of the pastures get grazed in early June, some of them get grazed in August, and then within each of those two time periods, we graze them at different intensities. So different pastures get different numbers of cows in them. And we're looking at the response from the plant community, in particular those forbs that sage-grouse eat. So we're asking a really specific question about how grazing management influences resources that are important to sage-grouse. And we're hoping to find ways that help either improve or maintain habitat for sage-grouse, but that also work for the livestock producer. Working on interdisciplinary projects like this one, so we're working at the intersection of animal science and wildlife science, I think can be a really efficient way to identify viable solutions to natural resource challenges. Rock Creek is unique in terms of being able to do the work here because we have access to cattle that we can use for experimental grazing trials. We have a lot more control over the cows here than we would on a typical public allotment. And so we can really fine-tune the grazing management and apply a true experiment on the landscape. It's valuable to me to do research here, not only because it's a beautiful, nearly pristine place to work, but also because of the input we get from our stakeholders. So, we hear from the advisory board and other partners, and they kind of force us to continually rethink and revise some of our approaches. And that input helps ensure that we are addressing relevant questions to stakeholders in Idaho.